system unfolding. Military science fiction podcast. Untold stories every Wednesday. Military science fiction podcast. Discussion, interviews, reviews, and rants. Military science fiction podcast.
Hey,
I guess Josh is the host today. You're the captain now.
I am the captain now.
It never gets old.
On board, I'm the captain, so climb aboard.
Welcome to this episode of the Military Science Fiction Podcast. I am Josh Hayes, here with Rick Partlow and Jeff Haskell. James S. Aaron is deployed forward on a very super secret and very dangerous mission about changing locks or something. I don't know.
In the wilds of the University of Oregon, Eugene campus.
That's right. Welcome. And Jeff, I think you came up with the idea for this episode, so I'll let you kind of drop the baseline for it, and then we'll go.
And you
It
will
was
do the
a
entire episode
collab.
by yourself.
Oh, I mean, I could. I mean, you guys can go. I got this.
Okay, bye.
It was a collaborative effort. It's kind of funny as we always try to chat about before the show what we want to talk about. And today just happened to be a good day for talking about starting a new series. How do you start a new series? What do you do with the book one? How do you start the book one? And Rick has the most experience of starting new series as any of us. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4 series under my belt. So I've started a couple of them.
And I have
And
the
I think-
longest. I have the longest in a singular starting series.
Yes, Josh has absolutely got the record for how long he's been starting a series. So I guess the first question is, when do you decide it's time for a new series?
Pretty much
When
for
the
me,
money
I
runs
think-
out.
But
I mean-
it's not the runs out, because you're always going to make more money writing new books in an old series. But it's a question of return on investment. Is that money worth the month and a half or whatever you put into writing the book? Because if you're not, if you're making half the money on this next book in an old series that you would on the first book in a new series, then it doesn't make sense to keep writing the old series.
Josh, did you hear that? Is it worth the month and a half you're going to spend writing the new book?
I mean, a month and a half, and and then a little bit more.
So it's a month and a half for a draft for Josh.
The draft's done. I'm rewriting it.
Yeah, see, this is like draft number 8.
Yeah,
It's a month and a half plus or minus 4 years.
except when you find massive plot holes.
So like there's 2 ways to approach this, right? There's the way that I think all of us approach our writing careers, which is as a business first and as art second. I mean, we're all artists, right? We're all artists. There's no question about that. But we're all artists who have to feed our family and provide for our children and be successful. Because you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want, if you're fine living in a mud hut in the woods.
Or if you're independently wealthy.
Or if you're independently wealthy. Or you're married to somebody who's independently wealthy.
Josh.
Can
those
confirm. I can confirm.
So
Well, no, I mean, yeah. I mean, you can approach it from that standpoint. I approach the series, kind of like Rick in this aspect, where if you've run out of story to tell in the series that you're currently working on, and you want to do something new. When I start a series, I did Valor. I wasn't planning on writing a trilogy for Valor, which is one book. And then I turned it into a trilogy. And I guess you can always expand in a universe with the characters and all of that. But I think of a series as dealing with a certain group of characters. And sometimes that story, there's nowhere else to go with that story. Those characters can't do anything else. So if you want to tell a different story, sometimes you need different characters, and sometimes that means you can leave them in the same universe. Sometimes you're starting something new. So series can actually be, very different things if you're looking at it from that standpoint. If you're doing multiple series in the same universe, like for instance Rick does, then typically you're doing either different character arcs, different characters, different story arcs, that kind of thing. or completely other different universes. Um, but I mean, to your point about the business, I mean, yes, you are correct. You want to do a series that's going to sell. But also you've got to be doing a series with a story that you want to tell and that you're eager to tell it. My Before I get into how I do it, my suggestion would be if you're getting into this now, or even if you've got a couple books under your belt, if you're starting a series, plan small. Um, don't plan big in writing. If you're sitting down to write page one, chapter one of book one of a series, don't plan that series to be 17 books long. You want really small series arcs that are manageable, that people can follow. My suggestion would always be do 3 book arcs in a series. And if those arcs continue to grow, then you can do more arcs in the same series. But always you want to make sure that that's manageable, because if you're in a series and you've got that 3 book arc and it doesn't sell, or you get to the end of the 3 books and you're not liking what you're doing with the story, you can shift and go to something else, and you're not letting down the reader by getting to book three, expecting book three of a 17 book series, and then book four through 17 never get written. That's my suggestion.
One of the first interviews I ever saw when I started being interested in being an indie author way back in like 2014 was this fantasy author talking about how he had just started writing his 29 book saga. And he was on book 2, and he was so excited because he knew people were going to love it because the story got really good at book 9.
Huh.
And I'm like, the story needs to be really good at book 1.
Yeah.
Listen, I know lots of people are like, oh, I have this really great idea. I'm saving it for book 2. And we've said this before
That
on
could
the
only
show.
work if each of his 29 books was about 20,000 words long and he combined them into like
One big book.
6 novels.
Right.
We've said this before on the show a number of times. Do not save your best ideas for some other book. Your best ideas go in the book you're working on now.
Yeah.
Every time you open a new book, a new book 1 especially, it has to be the absolute best opening you can muster, because that's what will determine if people keep reading. If you really knock book 1 out of the park, then you're gonna keep people on board through the good books and the bad book. I recently just got to read. So Arc Press, which is run by a guy named DJ, or not run by, but DJ Butler, who used to work at Bain, now works at Arc Press. They're doing this contest where you can submit
The
a
editor in
novel.
chief, right?
Yeah, I think he's the editor in chief.
Well, then he runs it, kind of.
Yeah.
May not own it, but he runs it.
I only ever hear from him when it comes to it. So, but they're running a contest through the end of the month, and that contest is like celebrating America. So they want not people to submit novels that are, you patriotic and pro-America and envisioning where America will be in the future and that kind of thing. And a friend of mine, Aaron Holloway, submitted a book, and he ran it by me first because he wanted to see if I would endorse it, because it's a superhero novel, and as some of you know, I've written a couple of superhero novels that were pretty successful.
Never heard of that.
Never mentioned it, Jeff. It's never come up. And he has one of the best opening lines I think I've ever read in a this kind of book. It's first person. It's basically no. Be serious for a second, Rick. Hold on.
Okay,
It goes something like this. It's something to the effect of, my first memory was running down a hill screaming as my grandfather chased me with a knife, trying to cut open my brain to see how it worked. And I was like, that's paraphrasing, but I was like, Aaron, you knocked that out of the park.
I'm in it.
And yeah, I'm in it. I'm sold. I'm reading this entire book based on that one line. And if you can do that, that's what you want to do. Now, can you knock every single first line of every single book out of the park? No. And sometimes you just have to be like, well, this is going to have to be good enough. But when you're starting a new series, the most important thing you can do, interaction with the reader wise, is to hook them as hard as possible so that they'll stay for as long as possible.
I agree. Book ones are important. But also, in talking about series, you want to know, you want to be able to spread the cool through the series, and especially if it's a new series. I think this kind of gets, beat like a dead horse and talked into ad nauseum, but you don't when you're starting a new series, the tendency is to drop everything as soon as you can. Just everything about it. That the Empire of Man spanned for 40,000 years and the blah 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 blah. But you don't need that. Like you said, the opening line is great, but it tells you nothing about the story, but it tells you everything about the character. And that's what will drive the reader in. The reader doesn't need to know the history of the character. He doesn't need to know the history of the world. He doesn't need to know all of that. You just have to pull the reader in with something that is interesting. Um, and then throughout the series, you can go deeper in. So like when I start with my series, Weaponized, that I started 18 years ago, there was a premise for book one, and as I'm going through that premise, I get to the answer of what's the premise for book two, and then what's the premise for book three. And you keep those kind of separate and always building towards each other almost, in a way as you're writing. But I don't get locked into um big important sequences that are interesting to me, that have to be in, like, say, book two, or that have to be in, say, book three, because some of those things could fit in book one. And so I don't, when I plan a series, I don't go in depth, I don't go deep into the books that I'm not currently writing. So I'll have like a one sentence premise for book two. They have to go get the MacGuffin from here. And book three, they have to destroy Starkiller Base or whatever it is. Um, but I keep all of that extremely vague, because it's not only does that help me in writing book one, but then I don't start taking away from book one as I'm writing, because if I have an idea, that's mostly focused on that first book. And one of the cool things about how I write books, and almost how we write at least the first three in a new trilogy or a new series, is usually the first three books are done before we publish. For instance, if you publish with Aethon, that's typically how we like to work, especially if you're a new author. And as a writer, that gives you a lot of leeway to go back and add things in that you didn't know you needed in book one.
Make it seem like you're an actually good writer.
Yeah, I mean, one of the example I can use of that in the Weaponized series is, when I got to book two, and I got halfway through book two, I needed some kind of a cool set piece for this meet, and I didn't want it to be a rundown warehouse. And I've talked about this before. It's this Warball arena, and Warball was not an idea, as I was planning the series, but having that gave me a little bit more flair to the universe, and I was able to go back in book one and just put little tidbits of, like, they're looking at a TV screen somewhere and they see a Warball game playing, and it does nothing for the story, really. It that's kind of depth into your setting. But in book two, when they actually get to go into a Warball arena, the reader isn't, now, what is this? I don't have any idea what this is. Because, and this goes back to kind of dumping it all at the front end. Um, Throughout the book one and half of book two, I sprinkle in, like, the rules almost of the game. Like compare it to football. Like, they're watching a TV, and the team gets a first down, right? So then when they get to the game and they're playing the game and they're watching the game, I don't have to go into detail about explaining what's going on in the game, because I've sprinkled that in here and there.
It was the first
Um,
rule of Warball. You do not talk about Warball.
yes, 100%.
Okay.
And if it's your first night at Warball, you have to fight.
Okay.
But I love that kind of stuff. And when I'm planning a series, when I sit down to start planning it, none of that is in my head. I'm just really thinking about the tightness of the story. And I could drone on for forever, but please, you guys take a swing at it.
um, I don't know. I agree with what you said about not revealing everything immediately. I'm kind of two minds about that, though, because I don't want to you don't want to, like, info dump, but on the other hand, if you don't make the world that they're living in seem interesting and intriguing immediately, they may not finish the book. So you want to give them enough to hook them,
Well,
to say,
let's deep dive on that. What are
okay.
some things you can do to make the world interesting and unique and intriguing that will hook them?
Rick, go ahead.
Well, I was I'm going to use Contact Front because I was just looking at the first chapter of it the other day.
Which is a
Um,
great first chapter. You should have read Contact at the Front by now if you haven't.
and if you haven't, then order it from Barnes and Noble and come to Utah and get my signature on it and signed to you. Um,
100%.
and the thing that I wanted to put in the first chapter of that book, though, was that this wasn't the world that you're stepping into wasn't like the Star Trek Federation. It wasn't a happy, happy, joy, joy world where everybody, is so proud to do whatever they want to do, and they're all like, um, they do their jobs for free because it's so rewarding type of deal, that they originally said about the Federation and Star Trek. Um, it's a world with crime, with corruption, with propaganda, with war, obviously. But I mean, the war is the least of the things wrong with this society because it wasn't really their fault. But it's not like an evil. It's not a dystopian world, but it's like a grimy world. It's kind of like the world from Aliens in a way. It's there's corruption everywhere because if you've got a government that controls not just a planet, but dozens of planets, then there's going to be corruption because government can only get so big without it being inherently corrupt.
I mean, governments of one people are corrupt. People are corrupt.
Yeah.
This is how people roll.
But I mean, you can put in safeguards to keep smaller governments less corrupt, but once you get to that size, there's no way to um, watchdog it all. It's just too much space, too many people. So I wanted to make it a world where you step into and you say, "Yeah, I could see this happening." But I didn't want to make it a dystopian world because I don't know, other people may feel differently about this, but unless I know I'm reading a dystopian novel, I don't want to read about a dystopian world. I don't want to step into an action-oriented sci-fi or military science fiction novel and all of a sudden everybody is constantly miserable and babies are being killed and giant robots are stomping on poor people. I want, but I also I didn't want it to be kind of 1950s, you know, everything's clean and everybody wears silver spandex type of society either.
Yeah, I really got the feeling when I was reading Contact Front is when he's in that big mall, that train station, whatever it is, where he's running.
Zocalo.
Yeah, it reminded me in my head, anyways. I was seeing that giant kind of mall slash space station, not space stations, spaceport in the original Total Recall. All those people
Yeah.
crowded in there. Stuff's happening everywhere. There's crime happening here and there. There's police walking around. So I actually did not get the idea that it was dystopian. I just kind of felt like
That's
it was
good
just
because I didn't
sort
want it
of.
to be dystopian. I just wanted it to be. I wanted it actually the inspiration in my head for it was kind of 1980s New York City.
I mean, and that's yeah. I mean, I totally see that. I felt like it was like an overcrowded, urban sprawl. But it did not. I don't like dystopian. I'm not a big fan of dystopia.
Yeah, I don't either.
I don't like the only dystopian fiction I've ever liked is Shadowrun, and that's mostly just because I played the game, not because I liked.
That's one reason I
dystopian.
could never get into Warhammer 40K. It's because it's just like the most depressing, dystopian, hopeless, world that could ever exist, and I really don't not interested in reading it.
But it's very inclusive world. It's
Oh,
very
well,
inclusive.
Well, and that I like that point, Rick, because if you're planning a series in your head that is grim or dark or whatever it is,
or
and you
grimdark.
Yeah. Well, you can have that or
Grim
just
isn't dark.
right.
Ah,
But that will go into how you open that series and how you're planning it and then how you're writing it. If you're writing a fun science fiction adventure, that will go into how you're planning it and how you're writing it.
This
For
could be a whole other episode, but it's just really important to remember
yeah,
whatever you open your book with, that is a promise that you are making to your reader. You absolutely make promises to your reader, whether you want to admit it or not, whether you think you do or not, you do. And if you open your book with a dark, dystopian, gritty setting, and then you switch to a bunch of rainbows and unicorns, you're losing 90% of your reader base the moment you switch.
for
and
sure.
not to call out anybody because he's a good writer and it's a good series. But that's the one thing that I found jarring about Marco Cluse's Terms of Enlistment was
Ah, yeah.
the drastic difference between how he opened book one and then how the book ended. It was like stepping from one book in one series to the first book in or like the third book in another series
Yeah.
because the opening of that book is so dystopian and dark and grim and hopeless, and then three-quarters of the way through the book it's like, oh, but you've got everything you want now, you're with your girlfriend and we're fighting giant aliens on another planet when you were just in this massive firefight in Detroit in this dystopian
Black Hawk
chaotic
Down in the
hellscape.
city, yeah.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
what?
they
Got
opened
whiplash.
the first half of that book was fantastic and I absolutely loved it. And then you go into the hypersleep or whatever sequence it is, and then he wakes up and you get on this whole planet and the shift, that not only the tonal shift, but the shift in protagonist and all of this other stuff that maybe they talked about, maybe they didn't, but it was such a jarring change.
And to be fair, the other books in the series, when you get past that, like the next three or four books,
They're
they're
good.
good and they're
Yeah.
interesting and they involve you. But why would you? What I would have done if it were me, and he didn't care because he made buttloads of money and it was very successful. But what I would have done, I would have taken that first half of the book and put that in another series that's all about that and made there another opening for that series that he wound up writing.
Well, and here's the thing I was talking about promises. Like I read that book and I loved that gritty military. I felt it was like a very realistic take on the military, especially like with the lottery and stuff and futuristic dystopian, Black Hawk Down in the future. I loved that stuff. He ate it up. And then all of a sudden he's on this planet. It's all sunshine, roses, and ponies and unicorns and tall aliens that aren't particularly scary.
Right.
I didn't finish the book. I put it down. I was just like, okay, well, obviously this is a different book than the one I started reading, and I'm not interested in that other book because I was hooked on this book.
Yes.
And
Yeah, that's why I say he should have put that section in another series that delivered on the promise of that section. And he could have written all that other stuff in another series with a different opening.
Right.
Now that's not to say he hasn't been wildly successful with it. He has.
Oh yeah,
and I
mean,
wish
it worked for
everybody
him.
success.
Didn't care.
But bear in mind, just because someone succeeds at doing something that is against conventional wisdom doesn't mean that that's why they succeeded.
It doesn't mean you can do it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean you can do it. You're not George Martin. You're not Marco Cluse.
You're not Andy Weir.
Certainly not Brandon Sanderson. So you're you, and you have to impress the reader on page one, just like I did, just like Rick did, just like Josh does, just like 90% of all writers do.
Well, and you mentioned Sanderson and that his series is the way he writes them and the way they're bound together is extremely unique, and it's something that it's very hard to do well. He's got the fantasy universes, and they're all different. They're all based on different magic systems and all of that, and then you put them all together because of this big thing. I would not recommend doing that at all. Like, just start with one thing. If you've got a military universe, military sci-fi universe, and you're doing that, don't go to book two and then have a completely different set of technological rules or equipment or whatever it is. You want to keep all that stuff consistent, because interchanging settings does not work in military science fiction, in terms of like in terms of the tech and the universal themes and all of that you have rolled into a book. If you're doing it on a different planet that's got different like societal norms or civilization norms or national norms, that's cool. But this, you have to have the same level of tech um, that across the board.
And
That's
listen,
kind
there's
of a
always going to be
nitpicky
someone
thing, but
who points out like the exception, right? There's always going
sure.
to be an exception. You're not the exception. I'm not the exception. Josh is the exception. Rick is the
I
exception.
don't know about that.
You need to, especially in the beginning, you need to lean in hard to whatever genre you're writing on, and write as close to normal for that genre as possible.
Yeah.
When you get successful, right? When you sold 1 million books or whatever, you can do what you can fly off the rails and be Stephen King and have child orgies. You can do whatever you want.
Don't want to, but
I don't want to either, but I mean, just saying, it's like he did it and he got away with it. Nobody
that
ever,
was the 80s. It
called
was
him
a
on
different
it.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just not sure there was ever that time. But my point is open that first book with whatever the book is about. Don't try to sneak in anything. Don't try to be vague. Don't try to hide anything. You never want the reader trying to figure out what the book is about, or where the book is set, or what the setting is, or what the genre is. Those are things that you do not play mysterious with. You can be mysterious about the villain. You can be mysterious about the murders or the plot, but they never want the reader to be confused about who am I reading, why are they doing this, and where are they? Because
And
if you can't answer those basic questions, then they're not going to answer them, and they're going to walk away.
and one of the things you can we talk about putting all the cool things in book one and not spreading them out through the series. One of the things you got to be careful of when you're planning, let's just say a trilogy in this instance, when you're planning a trilogy, you don't want to overload the reader in terms of material or ideas or characters or whatever it is. So if you're planning a trilogy and you've got all these characters and they do all these things and it's a space opera type where you're going to different places, um you want to really kind of narrow down the things that are really going to help you tell that story in that book. So specifically, if you're talking about book one, what are the settings and things that I can do to make book one great? And is this thing that I want to talk about or I want to tell, will it work better in book two? Because if you start overloading the first book with, let's just say, characters and ideas, it's going to get very clunky. There's a character that I introduce in book two. He's kind of a secondary character, but it presented an interesting story idea that really doesn't affect the series as a whole. But it was interesting enough that I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to dedicate some time to this. But that wouldn't work in book one. There's too much going on, and we mentioned him in book one, but there's no giving any kind of backstory for him. You're doing any kind of character development for him. Um, is unnecessary in the first book. So it's like that onion thing, the layering, that the mentioning him in the kind of the opening chapters of one of these characters is the very outermost layer of that onion. And then when he shows up in book two, it's not like a random like Deus Ex Machina type situation where we're like, oh, what's this going? We can, even if they don't remember, I know that I put it in there, right? And it becomes an interesting set piece in book two, and those are the things that I think about when I'm drafting the series, are what is most important to the first book and how can I make those things the coolest, without kind of overloading in terms of settings and all that. There's a it was Timothy Zahn, the Star Wars books, the Heir to the Empire series. And I I love the books, but what I thought was really interesting is he planet hops all the time, and he's on one planet for a chapter, and then the next chapter he's on a different planet, and he doesn't take a lot of time in world building, um, but it kind of gets distracting almost in a way if you're bouncing around to all these different places. And they were all chasing MacGuffins and all of that. So just I would say if you're planning destinations or you're planning to go somewhere, limit that to a certain number of places so that the reader does not feel um, disconnected with what's going on, because especially if they're new planets or they're new places, new space stations or whatever it is, you want to be able to ground the reader there and give them some time to breathe and kind of ingest it to understand kind of what's going on. But if you're dropping into a space station for like a half a scene or something and then leaving, you really could have done it anywhere, right?
And in movies, they call them set pieces, and they call them set pieces for a reason, because they have to build this huge set, and then they have a whole section of the movie take place on that set.
Right.
And against all odds, I really did a lot of work in building Kremlin Station. I mean, it's this massive Babylon 5-esque station that is, you know, important, it's central to the entire system, but it's also central to the story for 2 books.
Right.
And I keep meaning to go back there because I put so much work into building it. I don't want to let it go to waste. If you are just going to have something be like a background decoration, then it's not really a set piece. It's just, you know, a flash in the pan.
Yeah.
And you really want to make, like, when you're in a setting like that, you really want the reader to be able to feel like they're somewhere else, because that's the whole power of military sci-fi anyways, and science fiction in general, is that, like, that fantastical settings, faraway worlds and things like that, don't just treat them like they're at the bus stop.
Yeah.
You know, let them experience it.
For sure. Rick, in Drop Trooper and even Wholesale Slaughter, you deal with a lot of planets, but a lot of times the books are focusing on a conflict at a certain place. When you go through, I know you only usually plan like 3 books out, but do you look at that arc and go, oh yeah, we're all sorry, I had an itch. Do you look at those arcs and go, this arc will work on this planet, so we're going to be here for a book? And then, like, how do you go about setting that up when you're planning it?
I don't really think about the planets as part of the arc. It's more the experience they're going through. Like, you know, in Drop Trooper, there's the training, obviously, because you know it's a trope, and I've skipped it before. Like when I did Recon series, I skipped right over the training, but people expect it, and you know, Contact Front was a not much more successful, because Recon was a successful series, but it was more successful than Recon. And I think it's because people expect the trope. So you do the training, and that happens to be mostly on one planet. But then, you know, you do the first mission and the reaction to that, and then you have the lessons learned from the failures in that, and then you do the final mission where he matures, you know. And it happens to be on 3 different planets, but in other books, I've just, you know, they might jump around from one place to another, and it's all in the same arc of, you know, discovering or maturing or whatever. In Wholesale Slaughter, they were on that one planet at the beginning for a chapter, and that was it. And you know, so it wasn't. I don't really think of it in locations as much as the arc the character is going through, which could be one planet or it could be a dozen. You know.
The book I'm working on right now is my new series for Athon, which is much more of a ground-based infantry, you know, military sci-fi. I was going to skip the training, and I was like,
yeah, people want it. People
want it, and you know, I started writing it, and I actually really enjoyed writing the training, and then I ended up.
Can I be brutally honest in a very business-like and non-artistic way?
Mm-hmm.
The training is fairly easy to write. People want to read it, so it's not like they're going to skip over it, and it lengthens your book and gives you more stuff to put in the next book.
Well, and I was going to say is I actually went back and added 3 more chapters to the training after having a little kerfuffle about the ending. So it's you know, half of Starship Troopers, the original book, is training.
Yeah.
Now, what's funny is in Armor there's like a few flashbacks to training, but that's about it. But the training is a great way to.
But most of Armor is a flashback from the present, though, so he doesn't have.
Well, yeah, or the future.
Uh-huh.
Because you can't flash back from the characters in the present, because the characters in the present aren't the character.
That is true.
The janitor is the character.
Yeah.
You got to read the book.
Spoiler
it's
alert.
Amazing. Spoiler alert! A 50-year-old book. But I did the training, and I really enjoyed writing it. And I remember when I was writing Wraith that I only spent like 2 chapters on her getting her training, and I kind of brushed over it. And it was one of my big regrets of that book was not spending more time.
That's the same thing. When I look back after I did Drop Trooper, I was like kicking myself because the Recon series, I should have done. Only the first book of that series was the war, and the others were after the war. If I had any brains, if I had gotten with Athon before, or if they had existed when I wrote Recon, I know Steve would have told me, no, make the first 4 books of Recon all about the war. And the first book is mostly about his training, and that would have been the smart thing to do. I probably made a lot more money because that book was still very popular. I mean, I don't know how to rank it in terms of popularity as my series, but the first book at one point I got a book bub on it, and it got to top 100 in Amazon somewhere like in the 40s, I think. So it made a lot of money, and it could have made so much more if I'd known what I was doing.
Well, this is the great thing about being an author is, especially one who continues to write, because I know a lot of people who just they write a book, it doesn't hit, they give up, or they write a trilogy, it doesn't hit, and they give up. And is like you learn from your mistakes, you figure out what worked and what didn't work, and you try to roll those things.
And that's the thing about people. People give me crap, Josh, about writing really fast.
Josh,
I don't do that much.
Josh.
But the thing is, what that allows me to do is if I have a series that doesn't do as well as I hoped, well, in 3 months I'll have another 3 books that I can see if they work, and I can put what I learned from that one into the new one. And that's happened before. The Acheron series that I did it originally by myself, and then I did it. Athon re-released it. It did better with them, but still not by any stretch of the imagination my best series. And I had this idea of what I wanted to do, and I wanted to write a series with a kind of a misfit crew getting into one adventure after another. That's not what my audience wanted to read.
Well, it's so funny is that I have read so many books like that, and it's not what any audience wants to read. They want to watch it, right? They want to watch Firefly. They don't want to read it. And if you're basing what you're writing on what people are watching, you're not going to be successful because it's 2 different mediums. And like the number,
people had moderate success with that formula back around 2017.
Yeah. I never saw anybody break out with it. You know what I mean? I saw plenty of people writing it, tons of people writing it. It's a thing if you could search blurbs on Amazon or sales pages on Amazon, you could search for fans of Firefly, and you'd get like 10 million books of people wanting to read, writing those books about Misfit Crew. But just because somebody's writing something, just because a lot of people are writing something, that doesn't really mean what's selling. Look at what's selling if you're trying to do research into what to write. And also Rick's point about his audience is 100% true as well. My audience
had a lot of success with Misfit Crews.
He did. And that's his audience. Yeah.
That's.
But one person having success doesn't, undo the 9,000 other people who didn't, all trying to write the same thing. And sometimes that's luck, and sometimes it's skill. I like Chaney's writing, so
he wasn't the only one. There was what's his name, the guy who did the.
Are you going to point out all the outliers?
No, well, if there's that many outliers, then they aren't outliers.
They are, because there's 9 million books on Amazon.
What's the guy's name though? Dang it! Oh, I read his book back when it came out, and I met him, and I kind of know him, but I can't put the book together with which guy it is.
Must not have been that successful then.
He's a stocky, blonde-haired dude, the kind of a thick jaw. We know him from 20 books, and I can't remember his name.
Nathan?
No.
Okay.
But anyway, he had success with it too.
My point is when you're looking into what you're going to write, don't just write something because that's what all the other sci-fi writers are writing. Look at what's actually selling. And if that's selling, great. In my experience, that's rarely what's selling in sci-fi. Now, we write military sci-fi, So it's a little bit harder to break out of that mold. Obviously, I came from superheroes, so I also have a superhero audience who would love one day for me to write more superhero books. And I always tell them, I would love one day for you to buy more superhero books. And then maybe I'll be able to write them. But if you're looking at what to sell, don't necessarily go off of what people are writing, go off what people are selling. And you can see that pretty easily. If a book's got over 1,000 reviews or 2,000 reviews or 3,000 reviews in a short amount of time, it's selling. If it's been out for 4 years and it has 400 reviews, it's not selling. So just bear that in mind, that little tidbit of information. I love military sci-fi, so I tend to lean, when I'm writing military sci-fi, I tend to lean heavily into military sci-fi tropes, because I find that most people who write in most genres try to find the exceptions and write those, and that just drives me nuts. So in the superhero genre, there's untold number of books about non-superpowered people like reporters or detectives or whatever doing their job. No, not superheroes, not costume vigilantes.
He's not superpowered though.
Not costume vigilantes. Just regular people living in a universe of superheroes, and that's who they've chosen to write their books about. And I get this question a lot in military sci-fi, like, well, I want to write a book about this, but they're not in the military, and it's not about the military, but I want it to be military sci-fi. Why? It's not military sci-fi. Go write in the genre you want. So it's really important that when you're writing your new book and you're starting a new series, you know exactly what the genre is and you lean heavily into it. If you want to depart later on a little bit in like little degrees, sure. But in the beginning, lean into your genre so that people feel safe in reading your book.
Yeah. For us, genre specific, tropes are there for a reason. And like you're saying, you can have exceptions. But if you're not established and you're just trying to learn what to do, following those tropes is really good. And it also gives you kind of good landmarks to what you need to do with your series. You've read series before, like we're all writers, right? But we were all readers before we were writers. And so if you're reading those series with kind of a critical author eye, and you can point out like where these arcs are and what they're doing through the series, that will really help you in terms of planning. But again, I think honestly, keeping it really, really simple, world building and series planning are two completely different things. You can world build the crap out of your stuff and not use half of it. But if you're planning a series, treat it the same way. You're going to have a lot of good things and a lot of bad ideas and a lot of interesting, different things you want to do with either the story or the character. But when you're looking at the series, what does this particular series of books need to have a good story, and then start piecing that together. But try to keep it simple as you're starting the process. Because again, like we said at the top of the show, if you're not pulling the reader in with your first page or your first chapter or your first book, the it gets good in book 4 trope, I guess you want to call it, that is horrible. I hate that.
I had that problem. I mean, I think my book ones were good, but early on, the book ones were good, but I felt like I really put my best into like the third book or the second book, and I really needed to learn that lesson. And it took a while to put, everything I had, all the ideas I had that were cool into the first book to get people interested.
One of my favorite kind of quirky movies is Gattaca.
I love that movie.
Oh, I love that movie. It's
It's the greatest line of any movie. If you're going to say it, I'll leave it.
Maybe. There's a lesson. Movies and books that teach you life lessons are really important to me. Right? It's like really important that you come away reading one of my books having learned something about life, or at least had an idea reaffirmed about life. And one of those lessons in Gattaca was, I don't leave anything for the trip back.
Yeah. He said, you want to know how I did it, Anton? This is how I did it. I never saved anything for the swim back.
And so if you are saving anything for book 2, you're automatically setting up book 1 to fail.
Right.
Because if you're not putting your best foot forward in book 1, listen, you're going to have more ideas. You have these ideas, you're going to have more ideas. As David Mamet says. The problem I had
was I wasn't outlining back then. So those ideas came to me like later on after I'd almost finished book one, and I'm like, well, I'll put this in book two. But if I thought about it beforehand, I would have put it in book one.
Well, there's this thing called open mode, right? There's open mode and closed mode. Open mode is your creative, playful mode. Closed mode is your engineering, problem-solving mode. And my problem I've always had outlining is I can't break out of closed mode when I'm outlining. But when you're writing, you're in open mode. And for me, if I have a really great idea to how to change the ending while I'm writing book one, I will write it down, put it at the end of the book, and then I will write from that point forward as if that was always going to be the end of the book. And then, because you can always go back and change, it really doesn't take a lot of changing to change the direction of a book. I have changed the entire direction of a 124,000 word novel by adding 3 sentences. So it's not as hard as it sounds. But if you're halfway through your book and you come up with a way better ending, it's so much better than what you did, put that at the ending and write from that point forward, or try this anyways. Right from that point forward as if that was always the ending.
Were the 3 sentences, everything you just read was a hallucination. This is the rest of the real thing.
No, it's the 3 sentences where he woke up and it was all a dream. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. No. No, it was 3 sentences mentioning his mother throughout the course of the book. And
my mother? You want to talk about my mother?
Blade Runner. So you can really do a lot with a very little in a book. And when you're in open mode, if you come up with much better ideas, use them. You will come up with much better ideas all the time. At least I do. And when you're outlining book 2 and then you're writing book 2, you'll come up with better ideas for that. Nothing would suck more than having a really great idea and thinking, I will save it for book 2. And then when you get to book 2, that idea doesn't work. But it would have worked great for book 1.
Right.
Just saying. All right, I think we're getting close to time. We need to wrap it up. Closing thoughts, gentlemen, on opening a new series.
My thing would be open with, and this is in terms of book 1, open with your coolest thing. Don't save your coolest thing for book 3. And have a have an ending in the have an ending for the first book in that idea.
Exactly.
And then start another one.
You can have your Empire Strikes Back with an open end in your second book, but your first book has to have a definitive ending that people can be satisfied with.
Yeah, cliffhangers are not okay in book 1s, and the reason I say that, especially for a newer author, is that a lot. And I'm not saying this happens all the time, but I get the impression that sometimes authors write book 1s with cliffhangers because they don't know how to do the ending properly, and they want to leave that to something else. But if I read a book 1 in a series and the ending to that book 1 arc is phenomenal, then I have faith that he's going to do the same thing with the series on the bigger arc. If you can close that smaller arc and in that book 1 really well, and in terms of story and is satisfying, then I am more apt to go to the second book in the series and continue to read. And I know a lot of people kind of get bogged down into, well, the story doesn't end until book 17. Well, yeah, but I don't know that you're going to be able to pull that off. So I want you to be able to, I want to see that you can pull it off in the short thing, in the small scale, in that book 1.
Story may end in book 17, but will anybody be reading it at book 17?
100%.
Okay, Rick, how about you?
I would say that you have to strike a balance between not dumping everything right away in your book 1, but you need to put enough information to tantalize, to get people interested, to hook them into your world. I mean, you don't have to reveal like, oh, 20,000 years ago, these aliens, started all this by going back in time and that just introduce a society that people can get lost in. Make it one that's, and this is key, and I would have spent more time on this, make it one that is not hard to visualize. Because Josh's favorite fantasy writer, Brandon Sanderson.
He's not my favorite anymore.
Well, he was for a long time, incessantly. The Way of Kings is the book that everybody told me to start with. And it was really well written, but I have really hard time visualizing the world he built.
Mm.
So you
Yep.
can build a really cool and interesting world, but you have to make it one that the reader can visualize and keep in their mind. And that's your job in book one, especially if it's a series in a new universe that you've never written before. People have to be able to understand the world that your characters are living in. And you shouldn't, if you want to introduce stuff that makes it hard to understand, wait until like book three. Don't make things so complicated in book one when they're already trying to get into the heads of new characters and a new setting and new war or conflicts. Don't make it hard for them to even picture where these people live.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And for me, it's like when you're starting a book one, no matter what anybody else tells you, one, I'm right. But no, when you're starting a book one of a new series, open with the main character of the series. Okay, you can do prologues later on, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff later on, but for book one, open with the main character of that series and give us a reason to want to keep reading about him. Don't give us a reason to stop reading. Hook us with a great line, a great premise, a great idea, sympathy, empathy, whatever. Keep us reading because that main character is so compelling for us to read. That character will carry us through the entire series. And you can have lows and you can have highs, but if we love that character, we'll keep coming back because we love the character. And scientifically, and this is actual science here, our brains don't know the difference between fictional people and real people we've met. When a fictional character dies that we love, our brains mourn like a real person died.
And I feel like Jeff is a fictional character.
I am a fictional character. So bear in mind, really hook us with a great character, and then people will stick with that character throughout the whole series. So having said all that, thank you for watching the Military Science Fiction Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Rick and I have a book signing coming up October 21st.
I'll have one in 2030.
October 17th.
I'm hoping next year.
The book signing is October 17th.
October 17th. Our books are coming out October 21st.
Yes.
Book signing is October 17th at Barnes & Noble in West Jordan. And then maybe next year, Weaponized will come out, and me and Josh and Rick can do a book signing together.
That's right.
In Kansas.
All right.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it. Good luck.
Tornadoes.